The emergency lights painted everything red inside the Silveris Academy. Dr. Halvin ran through the corridor, her clawed feet clicking against the metal floor. Behind her, the sound of tearing metal echoed through the research wing. Something had broken free, and that something was now hunting through the facility. She reached the control room where Chancellor Vimros stood frozen in front of the security screens. His blue skin had turned pale, almost gray. On the largest screen, they watched a massive creature tear through a reinforced door like it was made of paper. 6 powerful limbs moved with terrifying grace. Obsidian scales caught the red emergency lights, making the beast look like it was made of living shadow. "How did this happen?" Vimros whispered. Halvin pulled up the system logs on her tablet. Power surge in Sector 9. The containment fields failed for exactly 47 seconds. That was enough. Which cell? Cell 447, the Raven Wing. Vimros made a sound that in his species meant deep fear. Everyone in the xenological community knew about Raven Wings. They came from Blackwater, a planet where everything evolved to kill everything else. A world where prey needed armor plating and predators needed to be smart enough to crack it open. Ravenwing sat at the very top of that brutal food chain. "We have students here. Children." Vimros grabbed his communicator. "Activate all lockdown protocols. Get security teams to every populated area, and find out where that thing is going." Halvin watched the screens as the Ravenwing moved through the facility. The creature they had named Shade was not moving randomly. She paused at intersections, her massive head turning as if listening. Then she would choose a direction and move with purpose. "Chancellor, look at her movement pattern." Halvin traced the path on her screen. "She is not attacking everything in sight." She avoided the student dormitories entirely. She went around the research labs even though the doors were unlocked. "What are you saying?" "I am saying she is looking for something specific." Security Commander Bresic burst into the control room. He was a Korthan, built like a walking tank with thick armor plating instead of skin. "I have 12 teams armed and ready. Give me authorization to use lethal force." "Approved," Vimros said immediately. "Wait." Halvin held up her hand. "Shade is one of only 12 Raven Wings in captivity. Her species is endangered. We cannot just kill her." Bresic's eyes narrowed. "That thing has already killed 3 of my guards and injured a dozen students. I will not risk more lives for your research project. She is not a research project. She is a living being with intelligence that rivals most sentient species. She is a Death World predator doing what Death World predators do. Killing." Halvin wanted to argue more, but another alarm started blaring. On the screens, they watched Shade encounter a security team in Corridor 19. The guards fired sonic weapons that would have dropped any normal creature instantly. Shade flinched, stumbled, then adapted. Within seconds she was moving again, faster now, angrier. She swatted one guard aside with enough force to dent his armor. Another tried to run, but Shade was on him in 2 bounds. "Enough debate," Bresic said coldly. "I am deploying hunter-killer drones. They will track and eliminate the target." He left the control room before anyone could stop him. Vimros turned to Halvin. "I am sorry, but he is right. We cannot let this continue." Across the facility in the education wing, Owen Pierce had no idea what was happening. The daycare center had thick walls designed to keep noise out. The children needed quiet spaces to learn and play. Right now, 15 young aliens were scattered around the room playing with various toys and learning tools. Owen sat on the floor with 2 saurid hatchlings helping them stack colored blocks. The little reptilian children chirped happily each time they got a tower to stand without falling. A Quilvan cub named Pip kept trying to knock the towers down, which made everyone laugh. Then the lights turned red and a harsh alarm started screaming through the speakers. The children stopped playing immediately. Some started crying. Others froze in place, their species' natural fear response taking over. Owen stood up quickly. "It is okay, everyone. It is just a drill. Remember we practiced this?" But this did not feel like a drill. The doors suddenly slammed shut with a heavy metallic thunk. Emergency barriers dropped over the windows. The ventilation system changed its pitch, moving to a filtered mode that created an unsettling hum. Owen checked his communicator. No signal. The entire network was down. He tried the door controls. Nothing. They were locked in. "Teacher Owen?" One of the Tentari spawn floated up to him, its translucent body flickering with nervous colors. "What is happening?" "I am not sure yet, little one, but we are safe in here." He hoped that was true. He gathered all the children into the center of the room, away from the walls and doors. Who wants to hear a story about Earth? I will tell you about the time humans discovered animals called elephants. They are really big, much bigger than me, with long noses called trunks. Some of the children settled down, distracted by the promise of a story. Others kept watching the sealed door with wide, frightened eyes. Owen pulled out his tablet and found pictures of Earth animals to show them. That was when he heard it. Something moving in the walls. No, not in the walls. In the tunnel system that ran beneath the facility. Something very large pushing through spaces that were not meant for creatures that size. The floor vibrated slightly. Dust fell from the ceiling tiles. One of the saurid hatchlings started whimpering, a sound that set off the other children. Fear spread through the room like fire. Owen made a choice. He could not stop whatever was coming, but he could keep these children from feeling helpless. He started a clapping game, something his little sister had taught him back on Earth. Simple rhythm, easy to follow. Clap once, clap twice, clap 3 times, nice. Now stomp your feet, make the beat, everybody move to the heat. The children looked at him like he was crazy. Then Pip, the little Quilvin cub, started copying him. Her small paws clapped together. Another child joined in. Then another. Soon all of them were making noise, focused on the game instead of the terror pressing in from outside. Owen kept singing, kept clapping, kept smiling even though his heart was racing. He did not know what was out there. He did not know if those doors would hold. But he knew these children needed him to be calm, to be strong, to be the adult who would keep them safe. The sounds in the tunnels grew louder, closer. Something was definitely coming their way. Something big enough to make the walls shake. Owen kept the children busy with games and songs for what felt like hours. In reality, only 20 minutes had passed since the lockdown began. His throat hurt from singing and his hands were sore from clapping, but the children were mostly calm now. That was what mattered. He pulled up videos on his tablet showing animals from Earth. The children crowded around, fascinated by creatures they had never seen before. A saurid hatchling named Trill pointed at a video of dolphins jumping through ocean waves. "What are those?" she chirped in her high-pitched voice. "Those are dolphins. They live in water and they are very smart. They talk to each other using special sounds. Like we talk? Sort of, but their language is different. Humans are still trying to understand it completely." Pip, the Quilvin cub, tugged on Owen's sleeve. "Do you have raven wings on Earth?" The question surprised him. "No, we do not." "What made you think of raven wings?" "My papa works in the containment sector. He told me about them. He said they are the scariest creatures in the whole galaxy." Owen felt a chill run down his spine. The academy did keep dangerous creatures for study. He had seen some of them during his orientation tour 6 months ago. But they were all supposed to be locked away safely. Multiple backup systems, fail-safes on top of fail-safes. The lights flickered. The children gasped. Then the lights came back, still red but steadier now. Owen heard voices outside in the corridor. He moved to the door and pressed his ear against it. "Negative, the target is not in this section." A male voice, probably security, "Moving to Grid 7 Delta. Copy that. Be advised, hunter-killer drones are active in corridors 9 through 14. Do not enter those areas, hunter-killer drones." Owen's blood went cold. Those were only deployed for extreme threats. Whatever had escaped was bad enough that they were using military-grade weapons inside an academy full of students and children. He needed to keep the kids distracted. He needed them to not hear what was happening outside. He turned back to the group with his best smile. "Who wants to learn an Earth dance? It is called the Hokey Pokey and it is very silly." In the control room, Halvin watched the drone feeds with growing horror. The first drone had found Shade in Corridor 11. The machine fired plasma bolts that could cut through starship hulls. Shade dodged 3 shots, took 1 hit on her shoulder, and then destroyed the drone with 1 swipe of her massive claws. The second drone lasted even less time. Shade seemed to understand what they were now. She was learning, adapting. By the time the third drone found her, she was ready. She used a torn security door as a shield, got close to the drone and crushed it under her weight. "She is heading deeper into the facility," Bresic said. He stood behind Halvin, watching the same screens. The drones wounded her, but they only made her angrier. "Or more desperate," Halvin said quietly. "What?" Halvin pulled up a schematic of the facility. "Look at her path. She is moving toward the containment sector, specifically toward Cell 448. Bresik zoomed in on that area of the map. What is in cell 448? Halvin pulled up the file. 3 small life signs appeared on her screen. Shade's offspring. 3 cubs, each about 6 months old in Ravenwing development. Bresik stared at her. You are saying she is trying to reach her children? When the power failed, all the cells went into emergency mode. Metal barriers dropped. Visual contact was cut off. Audio dampeners activated. From Shade's perspective, her cubs suddenly disappeared. The alarm started. Strange sounds everywhere. She tried to break through to the adjacent cell and could not, so she found another way. She is going through the entire facility to reach them? Ravenwings have exceptional hearing. She can hear her cubs calling for her from anywhere in this building. Every time we try to stop her, every time we hurt her, she knows her babies are still out there, still calling, still needing her. Bresik was quiet for a long moment. Then he shook his head. It does not matter. She has killed 3 people. She is too dangerous to let roam free. She killed people who were shooting at her and blocking her path. Look at the footage again. She went around the dormitories where hundreds of unarmed students were sleeping. She could have killed dozens, but she did not. She is not hunting. She is trying to get to her family. Chancellor Vimros joined them at the console. Dr. Halvin, I understand your perspective, but Commander Bresik is correct. We cannot risk more lives. If Shade reaches the containment sector, she might free other specimens. Can you imagine if the Void Serpent gets loose? Or the Crystalline Hive Queen? Halvin wanted to argue, but she knew they were right. From their perspective, this was about safety and security. But from Shade's perspective, this was about survival and protecting her young. Both sides were acting on instinct. Both sides thought they were doing the right thing. Under the daycare center, Shade moved through the maintenance tunnels. Blood dripped from the wound on her shoulder where the drone had hit her. Her breathing was labored. Pain radiated through her body with every step, but she could still hear them, her babies. Crying. Scared. Alone. She pushed forward, using her powerful limbs to tear through anything that blocked her path. Pipes burst, spraying water and steam. Electrical conduits sparked as her claws ripped them open. Support beams bent under her weight. She emerged into a larger tunnel and paused. Her 6 eyes adjusted to the darkness. Her nostrils flared, testing the air. She could smell many things. Metal, chemicals, fear, and something else. Something that made her stop completely. The scent of young ones, not her cubs. Different species, but unmistakably young, vulnerable, scared. Shade's predatory instincts told her to avoid them. Young creatures meant protective adults nearby. Dangerous situations. But her maternal instincts recognized them for what they were. Children. Just like her own babies were children. She could hear them above her. Their small voices, their rapid heartbeats. And one other heartbeat, slower and steadier. An adult staying with them, protecting them, keeping them calm. Shade moved forward slowly. She knew her cubs were close now, so close, but these other young ones were directly in her path. She could go around, find another route. That would take time. Time she might not have if more hunters came, or she could go through the room above her. Quick, direct. But that meant facing whatever adult was protecting those children. It meant possible conflict. More fighting. More pain. Her cubs cried out again, their voices thin and desperate. Shade made her decision. She positioned herself under the weakest part of the ceiling and pushed upward with all her strength. Metal screamed. Concrete cracked. Owen spun around as the wall began to buckle inward. The children screamed and ran to the far corner. Owen's mind raced. The doors were sealed. The windows were blocked. There was nowhere to run. The wall gave way completely. Shade forced her massive body through the opening, her scales scraping against the torn metal. She pulled herself into the room and stood to her full height. 4 meters of muscle and fury, 6 eyes fixed on Owen, blood still dripping from her wounds. Owen spread his arms wide and stepped in front of the children. His legs were shaking. His heart felt like it would explode. But he did not move. He could not move. These children needed him. Shade took 1 step forward, then another. Her hot breath washed over Owen's face. He could see every scar on her scales, every tooth in her enormous mouth. This close, she was even more terrifying than he had imagined. Behind him, little Pip made a small sound. Not a scream. Something else. A curious chirp. The Quilvan cub slipped past Owen's legs before he could stop her. Pip walked right up to Shade and reached out with her tiny paws. The little Quilven cub barely came up to Shade's lowest joint. She looked impossibly small next to the massive predator. Her soft fur was still fluffed up from fear, but her curiosity had overtaken her terror. Owen's heart stopped. He wanted to grab Pip and pull her back, but moving suddenly might trigger Shade's hunting instincts. He forced himself to stay still, every muscle in his body locked tight. Shade went completely motionless. Her 6 eyes focused down on the tiny creature touching her leg. Her head tilted to one side, then the other. For several seconds, nothing happened. The room was so quiet Owen could hear his own pulse pounding in his ears. Then Shade did something unexpected. She lowered her massive head down to Pip's level. Her nostrils flared as she sniffed the cub carefully. Pip giggled at the sensation of warm air ruffling her fur. "Big lizard," Pip said in her small voice. "You are hurt." Shade made a sound. It was not a growl or a roar. It was something softer, deeper, a rumbling that vibrated through the floor. Owen had heard sounds like that before on Earth. Mother cats purring to their kittens, whales singing to their calves. It was a sound of comfort, of reassurance. The other children began to creep forward. Trill, the little saurid hatchling, crawled on her belly until she was close enough to touch Shade's tail. 2 Tentari spawn floated up, their bodies flashing gentle colors. They had stopped being scared. In the way that only children can, they had decided this creature was not a monster. She was just big and hurt and maybe needed help. Owen slowly lowered himself to the ground. He sat cross-legged, making himself smaller and less threatening. He kept his voice soft and gentle. "You are looking for someone, are not you?" he said to Shade. "Someone important. Someone you love." Shade's eyes shifted to him. There was intelligence in that gaze. Real understanding. She was not just an animal acting on instinct. She was thinking, feeling, deciding how to react. "You are a mother," Owen continued. "Your babies are somewhere in this building and you cannot reach them." The alarm scared you. The walls came down. You could hear them crying, but you could not get to them. Shade made that rumbling sound again. One of her massive claws moved forward, but not in attack. She lowered it gently, carefully placing it on the floor near Owen. It was almost like she was trying to communicate, trying to say, "Yes, you understand." Owen noticed the wound on her shoulder more clearly now. The plasma burn was deep, cutting through scales and into the muscle underneath. It had to hurt terribly. She had been shot, chased, attacked, and she was still going because her children needed her. He understood that kind of love. His own mother had worked 3 jobs to take care of him and his sister after their father died. She came home exhausted every night, but always had energy to read them stories, help with homework, make sure they felt safe and loved. A mother's love did not stop just because things got hard. It did not stop for anything. "Let me help you," Owen said. He pointed to the wound. "That needs to be cleaned or it will get infected. I have medical supplies here for the children. Basic stuff, but it might help." He stood slowly and moved to the supply cabinet. Shade watched him but did not react aggressively. He pulled out antiseptic spray, bandages, and a healing gel that worked on most carbon-based life forms. The Academy kept it on hand for the various species in the daycare. Owen approached Shade with the supplies in his hands. This was the most dangerous moment. She could kill him in one swipe. But if he showed fear now, if he hesitated, she might think he was a threat. He had to commit completely. He reached out and touched her scaled shoulder next to the wound. Shade flinched but held still. Owen sprayed the antiseptic. The wound fizzed and bubbled as it cleaned out debris and killed bacteria. Shade made a low sound of discomfort but did not pull away. "I know it stings," Owen said gently. "Just a little more. You are doing great." He applied the healing gel, which would speed up tissue regeneration and reduce pain. Then he pressed a large bandage over the wound. It would not hold for long on a creature that size, but it would help for now. While Owen worked, the children had made themselves comfortable around Shade. Trill and another saurid hatchling had curled up against her warm scales. The Quilven cubs were investigating her claws with fascination, touching the razor-sharp tips carefully. The Tentari spawn created gentle patterns of light in the air, which Shade seemed to find soothing. Her breathing had slowed. Her body had relaxed. Owen sat back and looked at this impossible scene. A Deathworld predator lying peacefully in a daycare center, while children from a dozen different species played around her. It should not have been possible. Every instinct, every bit of training told him this was dangerous, but he could not deny what he was seeing. Outside in the corridor, Commander Bresic and his security team arrived. They moved quietly, weapons raised. Through the small window in the door, Bresic looked into the room. What he saw made no sense. His brain tried to process the image and failed. The human was sitting calmly next to the Ravenwing. The creature that had killed 3 of his guards was lying down like a tired pet. Children were playing around it. One small cub was actually sleeping against its side. Bresic raised his weapon anyway. Orders were orders. The creature had to be eliminated. Wait. Dr. Halvin's voice came through his communicator. Do not shoot. The target is neutralized. This is the perfect opportunity. The target is not neutralized. It is calm. There is a difference. If you shoot now in that enclosed space with all those children, Shade will react. People will die. Bresic lowered his weapon slightly. What do you suggest? Give me 5 minutes. I am bringing something that might resolve this peacefully. You have 3 minutes. If that thing shows any sign of aggression, I am taking the shot. Inside the room, Owen heard the voices in the corridor. He could not make out the words, but he knew what was happening. Security was outside. They would try to kill Shade. The children would be traumatized. Shade would fight back. It would be a bloodbath. He looked at Shade and had an idea. It was crazy. It might not work, but he had to try. Your babies, he said to Shade. You can hear them, right? Can you call to them? Let them know you are okay? Shade's eyes focused on him. She made a questioning sound. Owen pointed to his throat, then to the walls. Call them. Sing to them. Whatever you do to let them know their mother is here. Shade seemed to understand. She lifted her head and opened her mouth. The sound that came out was like nothing Owen had ever heard. It was part roar, part song, part something completely alien. It resonated through the walls, through the floor, through Owen's bones. It was loud but not frightening. It was the sound of a mother calling to her children. Somewhere in the facility in cell 448, 3 small Ravenwings heard their mother's voice. They answered back with their own high-pitched calls. The sound carried through the ventilation systems, through the walls, back to Shade. She called again. They answered. Back and forth, mother and children reassuring each other across the distance that separated them. Shade's whole body relaxed. The tension drained out of her muscles. Her cubs were alive. They were okay. That was all that mattered, Owen smiled. See, they are fine. They are safe. And you are going to see them again soon, I promise. He did not know if he could keep that promise, but looking at Shade, at the way she settled down when she heard her cubs, at the trust in her eyes when she looked at him, he knew he would do everything in his power to make it happen. Dr. Halvin ran through the corridors with 2 technicians following close behind. They pushed a hovering transport cage designed for medium-sized specimens. Inside the cage, 3 small Ravenwings huddled together, making anxious chirping sounds. They were each about the size of a large dog, covered in dark scales that had not yet developed the full obsidian shine of an adult. Move faster, Halvin urged. We do not have much time. One of the technicians, a nervous Quilvan named Dex, shook his head. This is insane. We are bringing more Ravenwings to the one that is already loose? Those are her children. Right now, Shade thinks her cubs are in danger. Once she sees they are safe, she will have no reason to fight. And if you are wrong? Halvin did not answer that question. She could not afford to think about being wrong. They reached the corridor outside the daycare. Commander Bresic stood with 4 armed guards, all weapons pointed at the door. Through the small window, Halvin could see the scene inside. Her scientific mind tried to catalog what she was observing. A death world predator lying peacefully. Multiple species of children showing no fear. A human treating the creature like it was a patient instead of a threat. You brought them, Bresic said, looking at the transport cage. This is a terrible idea. Do you have a better one? Your drones failed. Your weapons only made her angrier. Let me try diplomacy. Diplomacy with a creature that has killed 3 people. A creature that was trying to reach her family. Every being she hurt was blocking her path or attacking her. Look at that room, Commander. She could kill those children in seconds. She could have killed the human immediately. But she is lying there, letting them touch her, accepting medical treatment. Does that look like a mindless killer to you? Bresic studied the scene through the window. He had to admit reluctantly that the doctor had a point. His training told him to eliminate the threat. His experience told him that raven wings were apex predators that could not be trusted, but his eyes told him something different. This creature was choosing not to kill when killing would have been easy. "Fine," he said, "but my team stays ready. First sign of trouble, we take action." Halvin nodded. She activated the intercom system next to the door. "Owen Pierce, can you hear me?" Inside the room, Owen jumped at the sudden voice from the speaker. "Yes, I can hear you. This is Dr. Halvin from the Xenological Department. You have done an amazing job keeping everyone safe. I need you to listen carefully. We are going to open the door. We have Shade's cubs with us. Can you prepare the children? This might startle Shade, and we need everyone to stay calm." Owen looked at Shade. "Did you hear that? Your babies are coming." Shade's head lifted immediately. Her whole body tensed with anticipation. The rumbling sound came back, louder now, excited. The cubs in the transport cage heard their mother and responded with their own calls. "Everyone," Owen said to the children, "the big creature's babies are about to come in. Stay sitting down and stay quiet, okay? This is a very special moment." The children nodded, their eyes wide with excitement. They had already accepted Shade as safe. Now they were about to see baby raven wings. This was better than any lesson they had ever had. The door opened slowly. Halvin entered first, her hands visible and empty. The technicians followed with the transport cage. Bresic and his guards stayed in the doorway, weapons ready but not aimed. Shade saw the cage and everything else ceased to exist. Her cubs were there, so close, separated from her only by the transparent walls of the container. She tried to stand, but Owen put his hand on her leg. "Slow," he said gently. "You do not want to scare them." Shade seemed to understand. She stayed down, but her whole body quivered with the effort of restraint. The rumbling sound continued, constant now, a mother calling to her babies. Halvin directed the technicians to place the cage on the floor and open it. The moment the door unsealed, 3 small raven wings burst out. They scrambled over each other in their rush to reach their mother. Their claws scratched on the floor. Their small wings, not yet strong enough for flight, flapped uselessly. Shade made a sound Owen had not heard before. It was pure joy mixed with relief. She curled her body around her cubs as they climbed over her, pressing against her scales, making their own happy noises. Her massive head moved from one cub to another, sniffing them, checking them for injuries, reassuring herself that they were real and safe. The daycare children watched in wonder. They understood what they were seeing. It was something universal, something that crossed species boundaries. A mother reunited with her children. Love made visible. Trill crawled closer, fascinated by the young raven wings. One of the cubs noticed her and stopped climbing on its mother. The 2 young creatures stared at each other. The raven wing cub chirped questioningly. Trill chirped back in her own language. They could not understand each other's words, but that did not matter. They were both children. That was language enough. The raven wing cub approached Trill carefully. It sniffed her with its small snout. Trill touched its scales gently. Within moments, they were playing together, the saurid hatchling and the raven wing cub tumbling over each other in the universal game of young creatures everywhere. The other cubs soon joined in. Pip was delighted to have new friends. The Tentari spawn created colorful light patterns that the raven wing cubs tried to catch. Even the shyest children came forward to meet these new arrivals. Shade watched it all. Her eyes moved constantly, tracking every child, making sure none of her cubs were in danger. But she did not stop them from playing. She recognized what Owen had recognized earlier. These were children, not threats. Her maternal instincts told her to protect all young ones, not just her own. Dr. Halvin slowly approached Owen. "That was incredibly brave what you did." Owen shook his head. "It was not bravery. I just looked at her and saw what she was. Not a monster, not a killer, a mother. That is all." Most beings would have seen the claws and teeth first. They would have reacted with violence. Most beings have not spent 6 months working with children from a dozen different species. You learn pretty quickly that parents are parents no matter what they look like. They all want the same thing, to keep their kids safe. Halvin pulled out her tablet and began making notes. The galactic xenological community needs to hear about this. Our entire approach to raven wings, to Deathworld predators in general, might need to be reconsidered. Commander Bresic entered the room cautiously. His weapons were lowered but not holstered. He looked at Shade, at her cubs playing with the daycare children, at the peaceful scene that should have been impossible. "What happens now?" he asked. "Now," Halvin said, We move Shade and her cubs to a proper habitat, one where they can stay together, one with observation areas where the children can visit safely. You want to keep them here? After everything that happened? They are not dangerous when they feel safe. This whole incident happened because Shade thought her cubs were threatened. Give her security and space, and I believe we will see a very different side of this species. Bresik looked skeptical, but he could not argue with results. 3 people had died today, but more deaths had been prevented by a human volunteer who chose understanding over fear. That meant something. Owen sat down against the wall, suddenly exhausted. The adrenaline was wearing off and every muscle in his body hurt. Shade noticed his tiredness. She moved one of her cubs aside gently and extended her tail toward Owen. The tip of her tail touched his shoulder, soft and warm. It was a gesture of gratitude, of connection. Chancellor Vimros arrived in the doorway. His gray skin had returned to its normal blue color. He looked at the scene with the expression of someone whose entire worldview had just been challenged. "Mr. Pierce," he said formally, "the Academy owes you a tremendous debt. You saved not only the children in your care but likely many more lives throughout the facility." Owen shrugged. "I just did what anyone would do." "No," Vimros said quietly. "You did what a human would do." "There is a difference," he approached Halvin. "Doctor, I want a complete analysis of this incident. How did the containment fail? Why did our security protocols escalate the situation? And most importantly, what did we miss in our study of Ravenwings that a human saw immediately?" "I will have preliminary findings by tomorrow," Halvin promised. "Good. And Mr. Pierce, when you have recovered from this ordeal, I would like to discuss expanding your role at this academy. It seems we have much to learn from your perspective." Owen nodded, too tired to fully process what that meant. Right now, all he wanted was to sit here and watch the children play. Saurid hatchlings, Quilvan cubs, Tentari spawn, and Ravenwing young all tumbling together without a care for species or danger or difference. Just children being children. Protected by a mother who had fought her way through an entire facility to reach them, and a human who had stood his ground when running would have been easier. 3 days after the incident, the Silveris Academy Investigation Board gathered in the main conference hall. Screens lined the walls showing footage from security cameras, drone recordings, and sensor logs. 20 officials from various species sat around the curved table, reviewing every moment of what they were now calling the Shade Protocol failure. Dr. Halvin stood at the front, presenting her findings. Her clawed hands moved through holographic displays, pulling up relevant data as she spoke. The initial containment breach was caused by a faulty power relay in Sector 9, she explained. The relay had been flagged for replacement 3 months ago, but the maintenance request was classified as low priority. When it failed, it created a surge that overloaded the emergency backup systems. For 47 seconds, all containment fields in that sector went offline. Chancellor Vimros leaned forward. 47 seconds? That is all it took? For a creature as intelligent and powerful as a Ravenwing, yes. Shade did not panic. She analyzed her situation immediately and acted with purpose. Halvin pulled up a map, showing Shade's path through the facility. Look at her movement pattern. Every decision she made was logical. She avoided populated areas. She bypassed multiple opportunities to cause chaos. Her only goal was reaching her offspring. Commander Bresik spoke up. "She still killed 3 of my guards." "She killed 3 guards who fired on her first," Halvin corrected. "Guard Temos shot her with a sonic disruptor at maximum setting. Guard Rillian tried to use a neural net. Guard Kess activated a plasma barrier that burned her when she touched it. In every case, she reacted to perceived threats. She did not hunt. She defended herself." The board members murmured among themselves. One of them, a floating Tentari elder, spoke in her musical voice. "What you are describing is not the behavior of an animal. It is the behavior of a sentient being." "Exactly," Halvin said. "Ravenwings have been classified as non-sentient predators for decades. That classification was based on limited observations of captured specimens in high-stress environments. We never considered that their aggressive behavior might be situational rather than inherent." She pulled up video footage from the daycare. Board members watched in silence as Shade entered the room, approached the children, and responded to Pip's gentle touch. They watched Owen treat her wounds. They watched her call to her cubs in their reunion. "This changes everything we thought we knew about Death World predators," Halvin concluded. "Shade demonstrated empathy, self-control, and complex decision-making. She recognized the daycare children as young and chose not to harm them despite her pain and fear. That is not instinct. That is intelligence, Vimros stood. Dr. Halvin, your analysis is compelling. But 3 people are still dead. Families have lost loved ones. How do we address that? By acknowledging our failures, Halvin said quietly. The guards who died were following protocols designed for mindless beasts. They were told to use maximum force immediately. They were never trained to assess whether a specimen might be acting defensively rather than aggressively. We failed them. We failed Shade, and we almost failed those children. The room fell silent. Finally, the Tentari elder spoke again. What do you propose? A complete overhaul of our containment and security protocols. Every specimen in this facility should have a comprehensive behavioral profile. We need to understand not just what they are, but who they are. Their social structures, their emotional ranges, their intelligence levels. We need to train our security teams in de-escalation techniques. And we need to hire specialists who can bridge the gap between species. Specialists like Owen Pierce? Vimros asked. Exactly like Owen Pierce. Elsewhere in the facility, Owen was back in the daycare with the children. Life had almost returned to normal, except for one significant change. The far wall of the daycare was now reinforced glass looking into a new habitat. Shade and her cubs lived there, in a space 10 times larger than their old cell. Natural lighting, running water, multiple levels for climbing and resting. It was not freedom, but it was closer than they had ever been. The children pressed against the glass, watching the raven-wing cubs play. Shade lay nearby, always watchful but more relaxed than she had been in years. When the daycare children waved, she would dip her head in acknowledgement. When her cubs played too roughly, she would make a gentle rumbling sound that calmed them down. Trill sat next to Owen, watching her new friends through the glass. Teacher Owen, why do some people think Shade is scary? Because they do not understand her, Owen said. When we see something big and strong with claws and teeth, our brains tell us to be afraid. That is natural. Fear keeps us safe, but sometimes fear makes us see danger where there is none. But Shade does have claws and teeth. She does. And she can be dangerous if she needs to be. But dangerous and evil are not the same thing. A mother protecting her children can be very dangerous to anyone who threatens them. But that does not make her evil. It makes her a mother. Pip climbed into Owen's lap. My papa says you are a hero, Owen smiled. I am not a hero. I was just someone in the right place at the right time. Papa says most people would have run away. Maybe. But I had 15 children counting on me. Running was not an option. A voice spoke from behind them. That is precisely the kind of thinking we need more of. Chancellor Vimros entered the daycare, followed by Dr. Halvin. Mr. Pierce, do you have a moment? Owen stood, gently moving Pip to a chair. Of course, Chancellor. They moved to Owen's small office area. Vimros looked uncomfortable, which was unusual for someone who normally carried himself with absolute confidence. The investigation board completed their review this morning. Vimros began. The incident has been classified as a systems failure combined with protocol inadequacy. No criminal charges will be filed against anyone, including Shade. That is good, Owen said. She was just trying to protect her family. Yes. Which brings me to why I am here. The board has approved several major changes to how this academy operates. We are implementing new behavioral study requirements. We are redesigning our containment areas to be less stressful for specimens. We are retraining our entire security force, and we are creating a new position. Vimros pulled out his tablet and showed Owen a job description. Human Liaison for Xenological Relations. The position would involve working with our research teams to develop better understanding of non-sentient and semi-sentient species. You would help us see these creatures not as threats or specimens, but as living beings with needs and emotions. Owen read through the description. This is a real job? With pay and everything? With pay, benefits, and faculty housing, Vimros confirmed. You would also continue working in the daycare if you wish. We have found that children often understand connection better than adults. Your work with the young ones could inform our work with specimens across the facility. Why me? I am just a volunteer. I do not have advanced degrees in xenology or behavioral science. Dr. Halvin stepped forward. You have something more valuable than degrees. You have empathy that crosses species boundaries. When you looked at Shade, you did not see a death world predator. You saw a frightened mother. That perspective is rare. It is also exactly what we need. Owen looked through the glass at Shade and her cubs. One of the young raven wings was pressed against the window. trying to reach Trill on the other side. Both children made frustrated sounds at the barrier between them. "I have one condition," Owen said. "Name it," Vimros replied. "The children need to be able to interact with Shade's cubs sometimes. Supervised, safe but real contact." What happened during the incident was not just Shade learning to trust other species. It was her cubs learning that different does not mean dangerous. If we keep them separated by glass, we lose that. Vimros and Halvin exchanged glances. That would require extensive safety protocols. Yes, it would. But it would also be the most important lesson we could teach. Every child in this daycare will grow up to be an adult making decisions about other species. If they learn young that connection is possible, that understanding crosses boundaries, imagine how that will shape their future choices. Halvin smiled. "You are already thinking like a xenological liaison. So is that a yes?" "It is a yes," Vimros said. "We will work with you to develop interaction protocols. Nothing dangerous, nothing rushed. But if you believe it can be done safely, we trust your judgment." They shook hands, or the equivalent gesture for each of their species. Owen was now officially part of the Silveris Academy faculty. It felt strange and exciting and terrifying all at once. After they left, Owen returned to the children. They had grown bored watching through the glass and were now building with blocks again. Life moved on quickly when you were young. Today's adventure was already becoming yesterday's memory, but Owen would not forget. He would carry this lesson forward into his new role. Fear was natural, caution was wise, but neither should prevent understanding. The galaxy was full of creatures that looked frightening, that had evolved weapons for survival, that behaved in ways that seemed violent or chaotic. Beneath that surface, though, were beings with thoughts and feelings, mothers who loved their children, families who needed each other, lives that mattered. The key was taking the time to look deeper, to ask why instead of assuming the worst, to offer connection before resorting to conflict. It was a simple idea, really. Treat others the way you want to be treated. See the person behind the claws and teeth. Recognize that different does not mean dangerous. Humans had been learning that lesson for thousands of years. Now Owen would help teach it to the galaxy. 6 months had passed since the containment breach. The Silveris Academy had changed in ways both visible and subtle. New safety systems hummed throughout the facility. Security teams went through monthly training that emphasized understanding over immediate force. Containment cells were now called habitats, and they were designed with the comfort of their residents in mind. Owen walked through the renovated xenological wing, carrying a tablet filled with behavioral notes. His official title was printed on the badge hanging from his neck: Human Liaison for Xenological Relations. It still felt strange to see those words, but the work itself felt natural. He stopped at Habitat 12, home to a void serpent named Whisper. The creature was 3 meters of sleek black scales with the ability to phase partially out of normal space. Previous handlers had treated Whisper as a dangerous escape risk. Owen had spent weeks observing and had noticed something different. Whisper only phased when stressed or startled. When calm, the serpent remained fully solid. "Good morning, Whisper," Owen said softly. He had learned that void serpents had excellent hearing but were sensitive to loud noises. Speaking quietly showed respect. Whisper's head emerged from a heated rock formation. The serpent's eyes, which appeared as shifting patches of starlight, focused on Owen. A forked tongue tested the air. Owen opened a small hatch and placed a bowl of prepared food inside. Whisper's species needed a specific blend of minerals and proteins. The Academy's previous feeding schedule had been irregular, which caused stress. Owen had implemented consistent mealtimes. The change had been dramatic. Whisper was calmer, more responsive, and had not attempted to phase through the habitat walls in 3 months. "Dr. Halvin wants to introduce some environmental enrichment next week," Owen told the serpent. "Some puzzle feeders, maybe some structures to explore. What do you think?" Whisper, of course, did not answer in words, but the serpent moved fully out of the rocks and approached the food bowl with what Owen had learned to recognize as contentment. That was answer enough. Owen made notes on his tablet and moved to the next habitat. This one was larger, with multiple levels and a reinforced glass wall that looked into the daycare center. Shade's home. The massive raven wing was lying on the upper platform, basking in artificial sunlight. Her wound had healed completely, leaving only a faint scar on her shoulder. Her 3 cubs, now much larger and more coordinated, were play fighting on the lower level. Their scales had developed the full obsidian shine of adults, though they would not reach full size for another 2 years. Owen used his security clearance to open the habitat door. This was the part of his job that made some people nervous. He entered enclosed spaces with creatures that could kill him easily, but he had learned that most violence came from fear or misunderstanding. Remove those factors and even apex predators could be gentle. Shade lifted her head as Owen entered. She made her rumbling greeting sound, a noise he had come to associate with welcome and recognition. One of her cubs bounded over, making excited chirping noises. This was the cub that had first approached Trill through the glass. Owen had started calling him Scout, though raven wings did not use names the way other species did. Scout sniffed Owen thoroughly, a daily ritual that seemed important to the young raven wing. Satisfied that Owen smelled correct, Scout grabbed Owen's sleeve gently in his teeth and tugged. This was another daily ritual. Scout wanted to play. "Not right now, buddy," Owen said, scratching behind Scout's small head ridge. "Your mom and I have an appointment." He approached Shade, who had descended from her platform. She lowered her massive head and Owen performed their usual check. He examined her eyes for cloudiness, felt along her jaw for any signs of pain, checked her scales for parasites or damage. Shade tolerated this with patient stillness. She had learned that Owen's examinations were not threats but care. "You are looking good," Owen told her. "Dr. Halvin will be pleased." Through the glass wall, Owen could see the daycare children arriving for the morning. They pressed against the window immediately, waving at Shade and her cubs. This had become routine. The children started each day by greeting their unusual neighbors. Today was special, though. Today was Interaction Day. Owen activated his communicator. "Halvin, we are ready on this side." "Acknowledged," the doctor's voice replied. "Beginning protocols now." On the daycare side, a section of the glass wall slid open. This opening had been designed with multiple safety features. It was small enough that Shade could not fit through it, but large enough for her cubs and the daycare children. Emergency barriers could deploy in half a second if needed. Armed security watched from concealed positions, though they had never needed to intervene. The daycare children knew the rules. No running, no loud noises, no sudden movements. They had practiced for weeks. Today, 5 children had been selected for interaction: Trill, Pip, and 3 others who had shown the most understanding during training sessions. Scout saw Trill through the opening and made an excited sound. Trill chirped back. The young raven wing approached the opening carefully, following the training his mother had given him. "Be gentle, be slow. Remember that others are small." Scout and Trill met in the middle of the opening. They touched noses, then foreheads, performing the greeting they had developed together. Scout was 3 times Trill's size now, but he moved with exaggerated care around the smaller hatchling. The other cubs followed Scout's example. Soon all 5 children were interacting with the young raven wings under the watchful eyes of Shade on one side and Owen on the other. They played gentle games. They shared treats that were safe for all species. They communicated in the universal language of young creatures who saw playmates instead of differences. Dr. Halvin watched from the observation room above, recording everything. This was unprecedented in xenological research. Controlled interaction between Death World predators and prey species, facilitated by mutual understanding and careful preparation. The data she was collecting would revolutionize how the galaxy approached dangerous species. But for Owen, this was not about data or research. This was about proving something he had believed since that terrifying day when Shade burst through the wall. Connection was possible. Understanding could bridge any gap. Fear could be replaced with friendship, given time and effort and willingness to see beyond surface appearances. After an hour, the interaction session ended. The children said their goodbyes and returned to their regular daycare activities. The cubs returned to their mother, who groomed each one carefully while rumbling her approval. They had done well. They had been gentle. They had honored the trust placed in them. Owen left the habitat and found Dr. Halvin waiting in the corridor. She held her tablet out, showing him graphs and behavioral charts. Stress indicators were minimal across all participants, she said, unable to hide her excitement. Heart rates elevated slightly during initial contact, but stabilized within 90 seconds. No fear responses, no aggression markers. "Owen, this is working." "It is actually working. You sound surprised. I am a scientist. I am supposed to be skeptical. But even I did not think we would see this level of success so quickly. They walked together toward the research offices. Other scientists stopped them in the halls, asking questions about the interaction session, requesting copies of the data, proposing new research angles. Owen answered what he could and directed the rest to Halvin. He was still learning the academic side of this work. Chancellor Vimros met them in the main conference hall. He had a delegation with him, officials from other research facilities across the galaxy. They had come to observe the Silveris protocols and consider implementing similar changes at their own institutions. Mr. Pierce, Vimros said formally, our guests would like to hear about your approach to xenological relations, specifically how a human with no formal training in our field has achieved results that eluded specialists for decades. Owen felt uncomfortable being the center of attention, but he understood this was part of his job now. He addressed the gathered officials. I do not have a special technique or secret method, he began. I just try to remember that every creature we study is not a thing. They are someone. They have feelings, preferences, fears, and hopes, maybe not the same way we do, but in ways that matter to them. A Corthan official raised his armored hand. But how do you assess those feelings in creatures that cannot communicate directly? You watch. You listen. You pay attention to patterns. When does Whisper the Void Serpent phase out of reality? When stressed. So we reduce stress. When does Shade make her rumbling sound? When content or greeting friends. So we create more opportunities for contentment. Every species has a language, even if it is not words. We just have to learn to understand it. A Tentari researcher floated forward. Your species, humans, are relatively new to galactic society. Yet you seem to have insights that older species missed. Why do you think that is? Owen considered the question carefully. Maybe because humans are still learning how to understand ourselves. We have thousands of cultures on one planet, hundreds of languages, countless ways of living. We had to learn that different does not mean wrong. We had to learn that understanding requires effort and patience. We made a lot of mistakes along the way, and we still make mistakes now. But those lessons, those struggles, they taught us to look deeper, to question our assumptions, to give others the benefit of the doubt. The officials murmured among themselves. Some seemed skeptical. Others appeared thoughtful. Change was hard, especially when it meant admitting that old methods might have been wrong. But one by one they agreed to try. New protocols would be tested. Behavioral specialists would be hired. Containment facilities would become habitats focused on well-being rather than just security. It would take time. It would require resources and training and patience, but it would happen. As the meeting ended and the officials departed, Owen returned to the daycare. The children were having their afternoon rest period, lying on soft mats while calm music played. Through the glass wall, Shade and her cubs were also resting, curled together in a peaceful pile of scales and claws. Trill opened one eye and saw Owen. She crawled over to him and climbed into his lap, something she did when she needed comfort. Teacher Owen, she whispered, will Scout always be my friend? I think so, Owen whispered back.
Why do you ask?
My mama says raven wings are dangerous. She says I should be careful. Your mama is right that you should be careful. Scout is your friend, but he is also big and strong. You have to respect that. But being careful and being afraid are different things. You can be safe and still be friends. Like you and Shade? Exactly like me and Shade. Trill settled against his chest, reassured. Within minutes, she was asleep. Owen sat there holding the small saurid hatchling, watching the raven wings rest through the glass. This was what the galaxy needed to see, not the research data or safety protocols, important as those were. They needed to see this simple moment. A human, a saurid child, and a family of Death World predators, all sharing the same space in peace. The galaxy had spent thousands of years dividing species into categories: predator and prey, dangerous and safe, sentient and non-sentient. Those divisions made sense from a survival perspective. They helped civilizations avoid threats and build alliances, but they also prevented understanding. They created walls where bridges could have been. They turned potential friends into permanent enemies. Humans had arrived in the galactic community, carrying their own history of division and eventual unity. They had learned slowly and painfully that the ones you fear most are often the ones who need compassion most. That the creatures who seem monstrous are usually just fighting to survive in a hostile universe. that everyone, regardless of species or origin, wants fundamentally the same things: safety, family, belonging, respect. These were simple truths, but they were truths the galaxy had forgotten in its rush to categorize and contain. Now, through Owen's work and the bravery of creatures like Shade, those truths were being remembered. The future would bring challenges. Not every species would be as receptive as ravenwings. Not every situation would resolve peacefully. There would be setbacks and failures and moments when the old ways of fear and force seemed easier than the new ways of patience and understanding. But watching Trill sleep safely while Shade's cubs played nearby, Owen knew this was the right path. Connection was always possible. Understanding could always be achieved. The only question was whether beings were willing to try. And increasingly across the galaxy, the answer was yes.